Make sure that you do like a view.
Yes.
Speaker view.
Okay. All right. I'm going to let everybody in. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Tuesday Live. We're going to let you guys get all checked in. And why we do, today we have an amazing guest that we are so happy to talk about.
Talk to.
Talk to. I mean, this is going to be fun. So
You've been talking about her for months now.
You've been talking about her. You've been hearing about her. You heard about her on the Bigger Pockets episode. And by popular demand, here we have Lexi, who is she is went from our babysitter to now she's turning into a real estate mogul, y'all. I mean, she is doing the thing on the regular. She is talking to sellers. She's looking at deals. And I'll be honest with you, there's probably not many people North America looking at more deals than this girl does every day. She looks at a lot of them. So Lexi, welcome to the gang today.
Thank you.
So today it's going to be fun. Really, really easy. We're going to talk about Lexi. We're going to talk about how we met her. So let's just talk a little about you first. So for some of the folks, if you're just tuning in, if you have any questions for Lexi, please drop them down in the comments and we'll make sure we answer those today. Because we're going to drop a cool ton of stuff. But so where are you from? Who is Lexi?
I am from North Canton, Ohio, which, if you guys know the Pro Football Hall of Fame, that's really the main thing we have in Ohio down there. But I went to Ohio University. I graduated from there. I was studying communications, marketing, and sales. So I knew I wanted to get a jump start on sales right away out of college. I just wasn't sure which avenue I would want to go in at that point. So I was trying to figure that out, and I knew I wanted to move to Florida. So once I graduated, I hopped on a flight and went straight to Florida. And I haven't turned back since. So that's a little brief overview.
So why Florida of all places?
I grew up coming to the area that we're living in now, and I loved it. And I was ready to get away from all the snow, the cold weather. I had had enough. So I figured if there's any time in my life to make a big move, it was before I had any roots anywhere. So I jumped in and did it, and it was super scary, but I'm so happy I'm in the sunshine and get to enjoy the beautiful ocean all the time. It's fantastic.
It is really, really nice.
Yeah, we definitely second that one.
Yeah.
That's it. Getting out of the cold.
Yeah. So obviously from Ohio, moved down here. When did you move down?
I moved almost a year ago, coming up in October, I think. So last October towards the end.
Okay. So you come down in October, really visited the area, but never lived here before.
Right.
And so what was it like when you first moved down here? Obviously, you're looking for a new job.
That was a really stressful time, honestly, because I am new to the area. I have some family that's about 25 minutes away, but no close friends here, no really plan for, I knew I wanted to get into sales, but I was still looking for that position. So I was kind of up in the air, didn't know what to do. So I ended up going on care.com actually, and that's where I met Jenn and Joe. And I was just looking for something to fill my time in the meantime while I looked for that full-time position. And then I ran into Jenn and Joe and got to meet their family and their kids. And that's when we started talking real estate.
Yeah, I gotta say, so if you use care.com at all, it can be kind of frustrating. You put an ad out there, your children are the most important thing in the world. And so you just never know who's going to reach out. And I've messaged a ton of people, and I've gotten on an actual phone call with one or maybe two, one, and you're looking at her right now. And so, the funny part was I remember literally walking the dog outside, and I said, so what brings you down? And the story you just told me. And then I heard her tell me, I'm looking for a sales position. And I was like, oh wow, she's already like really good on the phone. As you guys can hear, like the tonality in her voice, and she's smiling all the time, and that's what she actually does on the phone. You can hear it as she's talking. And so I was like, she's gonna come over tonight or whenever, babysit the kids, but I have a feeling like this might be, our girl. And so sure enough, she came over, babysat, kids fell in love with her. And we were like, hey, by the way, we have this opportunity.
And I remember before Jen's like, hey, by the way, we're going to go on a date night. We're going to do a little Christmas shopping. And I just found a new babysitter. I'm like, awesome. And she was like, and she sounds fantastic on the phone and she's looking for a sales job. And I was like, oh, snap. If she turns out to be a good babysitter, we're going to hire her or at least offer her a job. I remember having that talk with her. So when we got home that night from the date, we asked the kids, they're like, hey, on a scale of 1 to 10, how awesome is Lexi? And they're like 20. Right. So both our kids fell in love with her. So the kids were great. And then that's when we started talking to her about, hey, do you want to do some real estate or at least talk about that?
Mm-hmm.
And so did you think it was weird when we were asking you that at first? Like, I never dove too much into that part of it.
It was funny because when I did talk to Jen on that first call, she had brought up, oh, well, we run a real estate business, all of the stuff. And then I remember my first day when I had gotten to your home and you guys were about to run out and we were saying our hellos. I spoke briefly with you about it too. And I was like, wow, if all my ducks are falling in a line right now, like everything's meant to be how it should be, which was honestly such a relief, especially after coming into such a new situation, a new environment, not knowing anyone, and it lined up perfectly. So I didn't think it was weird. I thought this is the universe telling me this is what should be happening.
Yeah, well, the cool thing was too that you had a little sales experience, not a ton, but you had a little bit. So you're like, oh, I kind of get the idea of what that might entail.
So what did you do prior? You were in sales. So you're used to talking to people, but what was that?
So I did an internship actually, which was a sales-based internship. And it was so funny because it was gutter sales. And at the end of that, I was offered a position and they really liked me, but I didn't feel like it was the right fit for me. I couldn't really picture myself selling that. That wasn't something I was really interested in. So it's hard to be motivated when you're not passionate about what you're selling, what you're buying, that kind of thing. So real estate, when I started learning more about it, because at first, I knew nothing about the real estate business. I came in with zero knowledge about real estate. Joe said a mortgage, and I had never bought a home. So I had absolutely no idea what I was talking about, thinking about anything. But as I started to learn and grow and learn more about real estate, I thought, this is interesting. And if you can get interested in it, you can sell anything, you can buy anything. So I feel like those key points are what, going from gutters to homes.
Well, I could understand it's hard to be passionate about gutters. Maybe unless you own a gutter company, then it'd be probably pretty passionate about it. But doing that for a living, I could see that. But so yeah, and I remember your first day on the job. Lexi comes down in the office and we're sitting there, just her and I. And I'm like, all right, pull up Zillow. And she looked at me and she was like, what is that? And I was like, okay. So I know when we first worked together, I was saying a lot of terms like VA or all of these other things. And I remember having to really break these down. So part of you working with us also helped us to be better coaches.
Mm-hmm.
Because there was a bunch of times where we worked with newbie investors, but many times we worked with investors who maybe if they've already done a deal or two, and maybe they've really been researching it. So the fact when we started getting to work with you, and there was, what's a mortgage? How does this even work? Can you spell Zillow? Right? All of these things. I've never been on that website before, so it's weird. I'm like, all right, download the app. It's going to be super helpful, right? So, but after I would say. And then when we brought Lexi on, we actually had a really difficult time. Our Facebook ads got hacked by these hackers who were selling stuff during Christmas time from one of our ad companies.
Yeah, that's a different story for a different day. But honestly, that was kind of like a blessing because you were able to kind of sit with her and walk through some of these things, a little bit more slowly than if the ads were running full blow.
Full blast. We still had a lot of follow-up. So when you first came on, there was a learning curve, right? And then I would say, I remember when you started working with us, I said, by March, 3 months, you're going to be doing amazing. And I remember having that talk with you. I'm like, hey, it's the end of February and look where you are already. It didn't take very long. With the right guidance, what would you say was your biggest help getting started?
I, like Jen was saying too, I think that honestly, the slowdown that we had with the lead issue and just being able to sit in the office and listen to the calls and hear how it's done. Because for me, I don't have a problem really talking to people, but I don't feel comfortable doing it if I'm not completely sure what to say. And so that's a big thing that held me back almost. And I was hesitant at first to get on the phone calls. And I remember you and Jen both being like, let's just do it. Just get on it. Get on those calls. And so after hearing Joe so many times and how the call works and what steps you take and things like that, it's really just listening to the seller. What do they need? What do they want? And how can you get them there? And so I feel like sitting down and listening to you say it, I mean, it sounds so easy, but then once you actually, it feels intimidating. How do I explain this?
No, you're
It
fine.
basically, I don't know. I feel like hearing you do it took away a lot of the stress. And then when I went up to do it, it wasn't as stressful for me to make those calls because I had heard how it went. And it's really just talking to somebody about what they need. So once you get those basics down, it was simple.
Yeah. And so really what it was, like what we worked on, I think a lot of it was just how to ask the right questions
Right.
and have that seller give you the responses and the answers that you need to make that offer. Right. And learning what those right questions are and how not to put the pressure on you. I even talked to her before. I know this because I do it myself, is like, just relax like your body when you're getting on these calls, because if not, I get tense, like my legs start flying around. Like I get really, really excited about it. And I have to almost like take a tone down because I get too intense.
Right.
So it's relaxing and it's just enjoying it. You're going to ask some questions and you know what? It's okay to hear no, right?
And my question too is, what happens when you do get Mr. Grumpy Pants? Somebody who's just not having it, he's in a bad mood. Like, do you have any suggestions or tips that you use?
That definitely happens. And so what I do, I always try within the first 15 seconds of my call to make it known what I'm doing, why I'm doing that. And I try to set it off so that I've got a good rapport with the seller. So if I'm all bubbly and happy, first of all, I feel like that definitely makes it harder for someone to be negative and mean to you. So I always try to start off very bubbly and letting them know I'm giving you a call because you asked me to. And this is what I want to do. I want to help you. I want to buy your house. And when you phrase things that way in the beginning, I think that's easier to get it started. But sometimes that doesn't always work too. And you've still got those grumpy sellers that don't know what they're doing. And a lot of times it's really just finding what their pain point is, because if they're grumpy, why are they grumpy? Are they grumpy because their mom just passed away and they're trying to sell this house and they're under a lot of stress? Because if they are, you can fix that by how you respond to what they're saying. So I always try to stay as calm as I can in that kind of situation, talk through it, listen to their problem. And if they're motivated, they're going to give you the answers you want. And if they're not, they won't. So I feel like that kind of determines if it's a deal or not. If they want to sell their home, they will. So they'll give you what you need and they'll be nice if it's worth it.
Well, and I think you just brought up a great point too, because the one thing, like when Lexi came onto our team, I said, listen, like you are in control. And the one thing that you always have to know is that we don't allow people to talk in a bad way to us. I would never expect you to be that. I know when I had my old job, like I could never tell a customer, like, get lost or go beat it. Didn't matter how bad that customer was abusing us. Welcome to the car business, y'all. So that was really unfortunate because I felt like the company never had your back. And I'm like the opposite. Like, listen, if you talk to Mr. Grumpy Pants on the phone and you're being Lexi and he's still being mean and extremely rude, excuse yourself from the phone call in under 60 seconds and move on to the next lead, because there's so many motivated sellers out there who will be nice to you that will actually be, want your help too. So good advice for everybody, guys.
Yeah.
If you're listening and you're talking to somebody, maybe they just had a bad day. Maybe they just stubbed their toe right before they answered the phone. And then here's, Lexi super bubbly on the phone, right? So sometimes it's a temporary thing, but if they're consistently super grumpy, guys, I will throw that lead directly into the trash and move on. Right. I won't want anybody talking to her like that either. So it's a house rule that we have. So for your own business, guys, it's up to you. But we love to deal with people who are happy And if they're in a situation that maybe they're sad or upset about something, we could fix it. I'd love to help them too. So great point.
Yeah. And I think, I don't know, the one seller that sticks in my mind that you worked really hard with Joe, was our seller Jeannie. And she was somebody who came in, what was it, March? And it took quite a bit of walking her, hand in hand, because her situation, she was super stressful, or she was super stressed out with her non-paying tenants. So any thoughts on that? Because I feel like you spent a lot of time with that seller.
So with Jeannie, when I first got on the phone with her, she was very short with me. And that was probably one of my first seller calls where I wasn't really sure exactly how to handle it. So I kept coming back to Joe and I was like, I don't know, is this worth it? Is this one that's worth it in the end? And it turned out, like you were saying, she was having tenants that weren't paying. She was falling behind herself. She was having to get another job to pay for the home that she was renting out to these tenants. It was this really horrible situation. And it ended up working out for the best. And what we ended up doing is we just kept flipping that timer. Jeannie definitely was a talker. And once we got to really get to know her and she got to know us, we were able to build that rapport where she liked us. She understood that we were there to help her and we wanted to help her. And things kind of, her whole energy towards us shifted in that moment. And I feel like a big part of that is realizing, oh, finally, I have somebody that's wanting to help, and I needed that. And so even though it did take a handhold to walk her through the process, at the end of the day, she's happy. And we built a long lasting relationship with her too, I think, just by sticking by that and working through it. And I think the other good thing too, that you mentioned, Joe, is sometimes you do get on those calls that just drag on, and it may not pertain to what we're even talking about with the home. And so flipping that timer, and you've got 60 seconds. And in that 60 seconds, determining, is this going to be a deal? Is this going to be something that has potential, or is this something that I need to walk away from? And with Jeannie, it was definitely one that you had to keep flipping, but it was worth it in the end. So just staying on top of that and understanding the needs.
Yeah, and you brought up a great point. Jeannie she wanted to talk all the time. She's definitely still sending me messages. We still talk all the time now too. That did not change. And she's awesome though, and she feels like she gained like another friend. I certainly feel that same way too.
Yeah, definitely an ally, I feel, because she was in distress and she really was like super hesitant. So just hearing you reassure her consistently, and then with Joe and even myself, I've gotten on the phone and I normally don't. There's just been, time and place for that. So yeah.
And she's still thrilled, guys. And that's what I love. I love the fact that we made it a win-win. And Lexi, you did an excellent job warming her up in the beginning because, she's a tough bossing chick. Jeannie don't play. Okay, guys, do not think she's that easy. She came in with her guard up. And over time, Lexi had many conversations with her and helped her understand that we are here to help. And if we could buy it, great. If not, hopefully we could help you. But if we could make this deal, we would love to. And I think it was just that nurturing relationship. So when you talk to a seller, everybody, for the very first time, if they don't say yes immediately, that's okay. It doesn't really happen as much as we would love it to. It'd be great if everybody's like, yeah, I'll sell it right away. But it takes that sometimes nurturing relationship for that rapport, right? So if somebody's just starting out, like, what would you recommend? Obviously, talking to people, you got to have that ability. But what are some like the little small tips or tricks, some advice that you would give somebody as far as that goes?
For me, when I started, I felt like it was almost a little overwhelming because I was coming into this new world that I knew nothing about. And so I had all these different things, all these new words thrown in front of me, and I wasn't really sure what to do with them. And so I was trying to figure out kind of a process or an easier way to understand all these new terms and mortgages and Zillow, just seeing what it all was. And what I think helped me the most is truly listening to the calls and how they're supposed to be done, and then just getting on the phone and doing it. Because once you get that part down, the rest of it just falls into place. So knowing what questions to ask, knowing how to get on the phone, and just to do it. Don't wait to do it. Don't wait for this or that. If the seller's motivated and they want to sell, like I was saying, they're going to sell. So get on, ask them questions, build your rapport. And if it is a deal, it's a deal. And if not, get on another call and try again. And I think just continuing that and that repetition of getting on calls and getting yourself in the groove of doing that, you're going to get deals that way. And you're also going to learn the other aspects of the job. You're going to learn more if it's comping, you're going to learn more about comping just by talking with the seller and looking at the area in general. But it all starts with really that conversation.
Yeah. And you do a great job at, asking the questions and then also listening. Like I listened to a call the other day that she did, and it was a gentleman who was hard of hearing and his soon to be ex-wife, and just the way that you were maneuvering and just handling those questions. And, they were kind of throwing you like lots of things left and right, and you were just like bobbing and weaving, and you could tell like we got to go back and like pull a call from when you first started to like where you are at now, because you truly are like two different people, and the confidence does come once you do it enough times. But like you said, just really listening, and how like at the end of the day, like how are you helping? It's not like, I need to buy this house. Like that's just not like, you never come across that way, and that's never how we ever want to come across, but just truly being there to help other people, and that comes across in your voice.
Guys, and this is why I love to do what we do and bring this to you, because we get to interview so many amazing people. And if you listen, a lot of times there's a very common thing that they all do, right? So if you think of Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill got to interview all these amazing, successful people, and they all have these common traits. When we're interviewing here, I kind of feel like the same way. It's exciting to get to meet people. And what are the common things I hear? What Lexi's talking about is she just takes action.
Mm-hmm.
And in the beginning, just like with me, your calls in the very beginning aren't where you're going to be, oh, that was the greatest call ever. Trust me, you're always going to find room for improvement at any point. I still look to improve myself, but that's okay. But the fact is, you are just taking action. We went over it, we rehearsed it, we tried it. I did some examples in front of you. And then I was like, all right, baby bird, time to fly the nest, go get it done. And you know what? There was some crashes along the way, but she just kept getting up. And the one thing I always loved working next to Lexi is when she would talk to a seller, she's very expressive with her facial features. Like she does not play poker. She does not have a poker face, guys. And her eyes light up with excitement or light up with, oh my gosh, I just talked to Mr. Angry Pants or whatever it is. She's very expressive. So to see those continual improvements and to see it growing right in front of us it's been really, really awesome. So, and it's just really, like you said, taking those little small steps, those action steps. So,
Right.
I know one of the things that when I got first started was, how do I find out like if this is a good deal or not? Right. Sometimes I would have a seller say yes. And this is one of the trickiest things we do. And we still talk about it all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, Lexi and I were
Analyzing deals.
Hour-long meeting this morning, analyzing a whole bunch of deals. So is there tips or something that you look for in a deal that maybe is like, hey, I really like this deal versus like, I don't love that deal? What are some of the things you like?
I guess it really varies. Every house is so different. So for instance, I know one we were looking at today, I was asking Joe what he thought about it, because sometimes you'll get those homes where you go to comp them and there's no recent sales or you're not able to see it. And you'll get in that situation where you're like, I think it could be good, but is it? I'm not really sure. And I think a big thing for those is just taking a step back. And we've even calling local realtors and asking their opinion on that. That's a big thing. And it's, again, being not afraid to get on a call, because they're wanting to help you. I know that every realtor we've gotten on the phone with, they're like, oh, this could sell for this. I'd love to help. And then you make relationships that last with these people in different areas. And I think that's a really big key as well. But I don't know, sometimes it can be hard to figure out if a deal is good or not. And big things to ask the seller, I would say, would be, what are the repairs look like? How much is it going to cost for us to fix it? And figuring out what that value of the home is. I think another big thing too is, what's the location look like? How close is it to the main city? And we always look, how far is it? At least 30 minutes from a Walmart. We always ask that and look for that, because if it's super rural, or what are the possibilities and what do you want to do with the property once you've got that? So really figuring things like that out are big.
Well, and you sent something to me that was hilarious. You had me cracking up earlier. on
What?
two things. So first of all, I want to let you know why I have everybody here. We got like 60 people watching. I did reach out to that one realtor about that Mr. Coe's deal, and I'm waiting for her to call me back. She's doing some stuff today, but I told her she's definitely going to call me back. So when you mentioned we're having a hard time comping a property, we found a realtor who just had a recent sale right like a few houses down, and we reached out to her to give us a little feedback on what she thinks that would be worth. Because that seller's open to terms or cash. And then she also sends me that she got off the phone with a seller today. He said he'd do 579 with terms for 5 years with 50K up front. So probably no dice there, she tells me. And when she said that, I giggled so hard because I feel like I'm maybe rubbing off on you a little bit. They always say, no dice. Yes, no dice. However, guys, this is like a beautiful $500,000 home. It is turnkey, like 4,000 square foot brick home in Georgia. So maybe no dice for 50 grand up front, but I think we're a lot closer than when he started at what amount?
100 up front.
So he
100.
wanted,
Well, you got him down to 50.
so you've already moved him 50 grand, and that was just what, one phone call?
Right. And so that's one where we'll typically kind of slow it down a little bit, wait a little bit. And if he wants to sell and he wants that full price still, we're the ones who can give him that. He's not going to get that if you list it with a realtor. So really just staying on top of him and making sure, hey, we're still interested in buying. What's the least you could do up front, and working those terms out more so when he's ready, because sometimes it just takes a minute for him to realize, or any seller to realize, this is actually probably going to be where I'm able to make the most profit off my home. And it's the best option, but sometimes it just takes some time and nurturing to get them there.
Yeah, absolutely. And you just brought up a great point too. It just takes some time. And I know with Victor, we've been following up with him for like months, absolute months. I go into the CRM. So guys, part of what Lexi's talking about now, she's dropping like 2 gold nuggets.
She's dropping a lot. And, if
within,
you
like-
are new, you might not even be catching what she's saying. So I kind of wanted to slow you back a little bit because now you're sounding like a pro, Lexi.
Yeah.
As far as terms, could you maybe just kind of like briefly, what are terms again? So if someone's kind of like tuning in and they're like, I'm really interested in creative financing, but because that was my problem. I didn't understand what terms even meant in the
Right.
beginning.
And I didn't either.
Yeah.
No, but what that is, and what I tell the sellers is terms or seller finance is like a delayed cash sale for full price. And that's always typically how I'm starting that conversation. And then I will just slowly explain it to all of you too. It's really where we pick out your full price. What do you want for your home? We close just like any other sale. We make you payments or make the payments on the home until we get you cashed out with a balloon payment. And really said simply, that's what it is. And we work all the rest of the terms out with the seller. So term length, purchase price, all of that are negotiable. So it's really just talking it through and making sure they understand what that process looks like too. But yeah, seller financing or terms is that delayed cash sale where we get them full price.
Yeah. And you just hit it right in the head. So for some folks that works really well. And for some it doesn't, and that's okay. There's not one thing that works for everybody.
Yep.
Besides maybe oxygen, but much other than that, and that's the point of it. So you're taking action. You're on the phone with a good, happy, motivated people. If they're grumpy, you're getting off the phone. Then you're looking at these deals and you're kind of sifting through as like, what do we like, right? So obviously, what's the condition of the property? We love these turnkey properties that really need no work. That's our favorite because then you're really only buying it for what closing costs and if there's a small down payment. So when somebody tries to hit you up for a big down payment, how do you typically handle that?
I tell them that we buy as is and we cover all of the closing costs and fees. And because of that, we're typically buying with no money down. And then I wait and let them answer.
Bravo.
Nice job.
Yeah. And really then
How hard is that though? Like the awkward silence. Do you enjoy that or does it is it like cringy for you?
I mean, at first I would jump in right away and I'd be like, but if you need something, we can do it because it was really uncomfortable. But what I found by allowing myself to give that awkward pause and just sit through it is most of the time people are like, okay, no problem. And so when you're not offering it, a lot of times they don't want it, but they just want to know the answer. Because this is a new thing that a lot of people don't know a lot about seller financing, creative financing, anything. So when they ask questions, it doesn't necessarily mean it's because that's what they want. They just want clarity. So
Ooh, I like that.
Mhm.
Clarity.
Dang, girl,
Mhm.
you are all over it today. Y'all can see why she went from babysitter to doing what she does now pretty quickly, y'all. And that's really the point. It's just solving that seller's need, how you handle that question. And honestly, I feel like when you're in sales, if you are a true salesperson, you're going to ask a question. And if you're really a salesperson, you thrive in that awkward silence because this is, that you actually have a legitimate conversation finally going on in front of you. You've weeded out all of the dirt, right? And now you're actually spending time with could be a golden nugget. So when you are in that awkward silence, for me, that's a blessing. That's where I feel most comfortable is in the awkwardness, because that's where I know I'm on my path to actually talking to a seller that I could do a deal with. And I love that. So it all depends, I guess, your attitude and how you look at it, right? Don't let that awkward stuff bother you. Kind of let it excite
'cause
you.
what happens, we get nervous, we start talking, and next thing you know, like you over talk, and then you can just everything gets confusing. And when your seller's confused, then not much can really happen. So, like you said, really pausing and allowing that clarity to come through, I think is super important.
Oh, and the other thing too, I'm gonna throw out another question that I know you know the answer to, but sometimes I hear a lot of times where somebody will share a deal, say, "Oh, I've got a seller finance deal, and they want to get me cashed out in 1 year." Right? So when you have a seller, it's like, "Hey, Lexi, so you said it's a delayed cash sale. When do I get my money? How soon do you get me cashed out?" What's your typical response to that?
Typically with that, I start with that's something we talk through directly with you. We want something you're happy with, so we're going to figure that time frame or term length out with you. Do you have an idea of what the most amount of time you could give us would be? And I start with that. If it's a little bit lower than what we'd like to see, I'll wait and I'll come back to that later once I have the rest of the numbers in place. Because once they know that they're getting their price that they want, everything else I feel like can be talked about, can be worked around. And sometimes you can make it work. So I know the one time we had someone who was looking for a 5-year term and we wanted to get it up just a bit, but we figured out the numbers. We got the price that they were looking for. And then we said, can we push this to 7 years? And they're like, that's no problem at all. So as long as you can work with them and figure out what they need and what they want, and the numbers make sense, I feel like the term length can be established. And sometimes they are saying, well, can you give me a range? Can you give me a ballpark? And to answer that, I usually am telling them, well, we have some people that love the fact that we're taking over these payments and they've given us 20 to 30 years before. And then I wait a little bit, see what they say. If they're like, oh no, I could never. Or if they're like, okay. And then if they are looking for a shorter term, that's when I'll say, okay, what about a shorter term? Would that work for you? Sometimes that looks closer to 7 to 10 years. And when you phrase it that way, they're like, oh, phew, like it's not going to be always 30 years. There's some leeway in there.
Yeah, and you said a great point, because if you pause, many times you'll say 20 to 30 years, like, "Oh, that's fine." Guys, it happens all of the time. So the one thing that I would say is fabulous about Lexi is she just asks the questions. And if you just learn like the 4, 5, 6 questions to ask in every scenario, and just get really good at asking the questions and have sellers give you the responses of what they actually want, that's how you're going to find the deals. So bravo. So, okay, we're going to go over fast forward to now. So what's your day like today in your role? Because obviously you're working with us. You also help oversee 2 virtual assistants who work for us in the Philippines. We have Luca on our team, who you also work with, who helps us when Lexi makes a deal. He goes and finds buyers, but he also helps Lexi working on some of the new leads coming in too, because we have a bunch. So she kind of runs a lot of different things right now. So Lexi wakes up in the morning, she clocks in or goes to her iPad. What does that look like now?
So typically when I start my day, I look through and I see anything that I could have missed from the day before. A lot of times sellers aren't available during the typical 9 to 5 because they're working too. So I checked to see if I missed anything while I was away, anything like that. And I see who's available to get on a call first thing. Because a lot of times some people will say, hey, can you give me a call at 9 a.m. before I go into work? So I check for that. And then the biggest thing I would say that I do too is we are getting several leads in every single day. So we analyze it. We actually have a really good system. I'm sure you've mentioned it before, but we categorize each lead once the VAs will collect the information about the address and what they want for the home and just some basic information. Does it need any repairs, things like that. It gets categorized into a high motivation lead, a medium motivation lead, or a no lead. So they said no to terms, they said maybe to terms, they said yes. And I always start off with the yes leads. And I analyze that deal pretty quickly. I just try to look at the numbers and see where it could be. And the second I think that this could be a deal, I message them, are you free for a call right now? We're definitely interested in purchasing. And a lot of my day consists of making those calls. And sometimes they're leads that work and sometimes they don't. When they don't work, that's when we start that follow-up and that nurturing process. But most of my day, I would say, is analyzing those deals and then running numbers to see if it actually is a deal. So what's it rent for in the area? Could we make a spread off of this? Is there, are there multiple schools, or what are the points in the area that would make it a deal? And so looking at that, and talking to sellers, I think getting on the phone is the biggest thing.
I just had goosebumps. I am so proud. I got to say this, like, seriously, I could turn this whole thing off right now and just tell you one-on-one how proud I am of you. That is amazing. And I love seeing us talk about this right now, because once again, when Lexi calls me or sends Jenn a message about a deal, the one thing I always want to find out is, like, how much money do we need to buy the deal? Like, how much money, right? Does the seller maybe want up front or things like that? And then are we able to make any money on the monthly cash flow? Like, are we able to have a payment for X and it rents for much more? What does that look like? And that's what helps us determine if we love a deal or not. So I'm so happy you brought that up. I also want to get into rapport building, because I don't think this gets talked about enough. And so we just wrote a deal last week, I think in Clearwater, Florida. Lexi wrote up this deal. And this was 100% rapport, guys. The way she handled the seller and the way she did it. So can you explain to me our Clearwater deal that we just did, and how we got that deal even? Because I know he was talking to a few other investors, wasn't he?
Right. Yeah, he was talking to several. And I had hopped on the call with him and was just trying to figure out a situation. He was looking to move, and he was getting offers that were pretty high, I feel like, for the area and for the home. But I was talking with him, figuring out what he needed and what he wanted. And like I said, I feel like the beginning of your phone call, and a lot of it is they don't see your face. They don't know if you're smiling when you're talking. They don't know any of that. So the best way to let them know that you're welcoming and you're open and you want to help and talk with them is vocal variety. I think
I love that.
changing the tones of your voice when you speak to someone, and it really changes the way that they look at you. So I got on the call with him, and I could tell he was with his kids, which another thing that I always make sure to do on those calls is now still a good time for you. Because sometimes, like in this instance, he was in the middle of dealing with his 2 kids and he was cooking dinner and it wasn't a good time. So I give him a call back the second he said he was free, and we worked around his schedule. And I think even doing something like that really shows them that you care about their time, you value them just as much as you are expecting them to value you and your time. So showing that's really big. But what ended up happening with him is he was getting offers that were higher than we even offered him, and continuing the rapport and calling him when he's available, and when really working around him, what works best for him, what do you need? And we found all those points and we capitalized on them. And I feel like building that rapport, he ended up choosing us over investors that were offering him a bit more, because we were willing to work with him and build that relationship with him, not just make a deal, but have a relationship.
Well, and the whole thing about it was, like, so she's telling me about this deal, and I think it was on a Thursday, because we do our Thursday support calls for our small group coaching, and I'm literally about to hop on there. And so I talked to him for like 10 minutes before that, and he was like, Lexi's the best. And this is the only reason why I'm working with you guys, because, she seems like she really wants to help, and I believe you guys and I trust you. So he's like, if you could do it for this price, fine, you have a deal. And I remember telling Lexi, it was like 7 o'clock on a Thursday night. And usually she's off and she's doing stuff around town, and she got a dog and down at the water, because we live in the beach in tropical Florida. And if you follow her on, Instagram, she's always doing cool stuff. So you should, if you're not already. But I called her and I was like, hey, listen, I know you're probably kind of doing something right now, but I just talked to the seller. I'm about to hop into this meeting. Is there a way you could just write this up real quick, call him, and just get him to sign it now? He's ready to do business now, because many times before that, he's like, I will, but I have to talk to one more person. All right, you have a deal, but I have to talk to one more person. He kept doing that. So when he called and was like, hey, I will do it now at this price, I called Lexi in a jam. And I think we just started our Zoom within a few minutes. And I see my phone DocuSign app go ba-bang. So she filled out this deal, got on the phone with him and had him sign it. And how long did it take you?
I think our call was less than 6 minutes long.
Yeah. It was like 3 minutes later, my phone went off. So you had to probably spend 3 minutes saying goodbye.
Super quick. And it was super easy. And it was really just, if you know that you like us and you like this deal, what can we do to get this done tonight? We want to make this happen. And he was like, me too, let's do it. And so just being able to be flexible and quick with those things. Because we've also had some things happen sometimes where sometimes the seller wants to wait, they want to talk it over, they want to slow it down. And when that happens, a lot of times it ends up not being a deal. And so I feel like that urgency and getting on and getting off really quickly really helped us, because he's not in his head. He's not overthinking it. It's nothing crazy. It's just the simple deal that we're explaining. But sometimes it can get a little overwhelming, I feel like, and that's what can make them back out.
Well, yeah. And the point of it is you were able to hop on that call once again when he was ready, and to do it right away. Right. So, and I know for sure when somebody says, I'm ready to do business right now, now's the time you better do business with them if you can. Right. Don't say, oh, I have to do this. I'm watching reruns of Seinfeld and I want to call you tomorrow. Like, you will be missing deals left and right. So great advice.
And another thing I wanted to bring up too is it ever like weird to you that we do this all virtually? Like, you've never actually stepped foot into this house or any of these houses for that matter, of these people that you're writing up these contracts for.
It's funny you say that, because I just had someone on the phone with me today and they were asking, well, are you going to come in person to see it, or are you just going to buy this house off the photos? And I was like, well, she was close. She was in Davenport, so she wasn't too far from us. But I was like, sometimes we're able to do that, but we want to be able to convenience you the most. We don't want to be a listing agent that's going to have people coming through your home and being an inconvenience. And I was like, if you can just send some photos, and if you want us to come in person and see it, I'd love to, but let's figure out the rest of the details. And she was completely fine with that. But for me, I don't think it's weird. Sometimes it's a little tricky to get some sellers to send photos. Sometimes they don't know how to send photos. So that's where it gets a little.
I know our older sellers.
Or our sellers with bad phones. But...
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So when we did that deal in Clearwater, we live about 45 minutes away. How many times did you go to that house?
0.
Have we ever sent you to one house ever?
I have never stepped in any house. No.
We've only sent Luca to one.
And that was when we already owned.
I love you, Luca.
But that was the whole point is, guys, we do it all virtually. Even when we make a deal 45 minutes from where we live, we don't go, she doesn't go. And I certainly wouldn't send Lexi on her own.
Well, because that was one of the number one mistakes we made early on in our journey here, was we would go to these houses, we would hire a babysitter, pay somebody, take his one day off, and go to these houses, and we wouldn't even do the deal. It was just like, it just wasted time and energy and effort. And so like to prevent others from doing that too, like I love sharing that, like, this all can be done virtually. Yeah. Especially with these beautiful turnkey houses, and you know how much we love those. So like, what are some keys, points that stick out to, some of these deals that we be able to help them, like, buying on terms, would you say? If, the seller says a couple of key points, you're like, okay, this might work.
I always look to see first, do they have a mortgage remaining or not? Is there an HOA and can you rent within that HOA? That's another key thing for terms where I'm like, okay, HOA, you can rent and their monthly payment is less than what it rents for. Once I see that, that's when I'm like, this is a fantastic deal. Let's look further at the details. So those I'd say are the three main things.
Awesome.
Yay. So now here's where you're going to blow everybody's mind.
Oh
Okay.
boy.
When we wrote up a cash deal, Lexi's like, this is a little trickier than writing up a creative finance deal. And I'm like, you're like the only person in America who's ever said that. Because usually
The other way around.
the one thing that everybody always says to us is, hey, Joe, I want you to teach me how to fill out one of these agreements, right? It is like the number one request of everything on every Facebook group. How do I fill out these agreements? So how hard is it? You've been doing them. You do a lot of them.
It's not hard at all. And I would prefer to do a terms deal over, like Joe said, over writing up the cash deals. And that's just because I mean, we do a lot of terms deals. So I feel like that help me get used to it. But same thing with getting on the phone. It's all repetition. And once you know what you're talking about, look at the contract and it all makes sense. I mean, you put the seller's name where it goes, and then you just write the terms down. And once you have that, that's really those are the key things. The rest of it, look at how it's done once and then keep practicing and you're going to get it down.
Everybody's head just exploded. So
Mhm.
thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm like, you know what? It's really not that hard after you've done it a few times. And they're like, it's got to be the like most difficult thing ever. I'm like, well, and I don't usually bring too much to the streets, but like when you were like the other day, we're writing a cash deal. She's like, this is all tougher. I'm like, we just got to change a couple of things, but there's no payments. There's no nothing. One payment of that. Right. So it's hilarious because I know when I did my very first deal and I wrote cash deals, it was a little easier for me. When I did my first creative finance deal writing up, this poor girl, I was doing it on paper.
And pen.
I was
printing the papers,
printing
messing
the
it up.
contracts. I'm
Spelling
crippling
this
it up. I'm
person's name.
throwing it against the wall. Jen comes into our old office back. This is like 6-7 years ago. And I'm in my office at her house. And she walks in and she's like, is everything okay? And I'm like, yes, everything is just fine. I'm gritting my teeth because I don't want to see
Crumpling up papers.
her see me freaking out. And there's like crumpled papers all over the floor. So the fact that you're doing it so easily. The one thing that we talked about is doing it on a iPad, guys.
iPad, yeah.
Makes it a lot easier than printing out these agreements and then handwriting it in there. Maybe you should or could, but I noticed when I could do it on an iPad, if I goof something up, I could just delete it and go back. So
yeah, if you're just tuning in, this is Lexi. She's our acquisition manager. She works with us and she definitely could buy on her own. Absolutely now at this point, but she's currently on our team. So that's a question that's coming in. Are you buying for yourself or are you with us? So,
well, and I will kind of help answer that too, Janet, because we encourage when anybody works with us, is our goal is also to help you find your own property.
Yeah.
So if Lexi wants a rental property, I would love and be honored to help her get that. And it's the same thing too. Like every single house that we come across, that I'm like, oh, Lexi, we might find a house for you. She's got a dog now. And so, if we could find her
a couple close ones so far.
Yeah, I know. I know. So that's the kind of point is, I absolutely love it when we have somebody that works with us. And you guys will get to meet Luca coming up soon, who is on our team. He is a 19-year-old. He is dynamite. And he got his very first deal outside of working for us. So we get to talk about it at 19 years old. So yeah, we highly encourage it. And nothing would be more awesome than Lexi to find her first house that she gets to live in on terms. I'd love to get like a low payment, 0% mortgage, no money down on a beautiful
nice
house.
yard.
Yeah.
The doggy.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's the awesome thing about this is, I know you shared earlier, I don't know what deal it was, but the rate was so low, like people don't even believe it.
Oh, I know. I didn't even tell you about that one, by the way. We're writing up a deal where I found it on PropStream. You know how I look on PropStream for houses that are currently for sale and they have really no equity? Well, I was looking down in Florida where I always do, and then I started checking other places. And I was like, wait a minute, this is actually a nice little deal. I look up the seller's mortgage. They have a 2.875 interest rate. Now, guys, here's the problem. It's listed with a realtor. And it's not a problem, but sometimes a realtor is the gatekeeper and they won't let you say yes or no. But I talked to this realtor, Autumn's her name, and she was fantastic. And she was like, hey, listen, I'm having an open house there this weekend, so we'll see what we goes. I'll also let the seller know. And then she texted me Saturday. She's like, hey, I've mentioned this to the seller, and she'd like to get on a call on Sunday. Talk to her on Sunday. And they said, yeah, we'll go ahead and do the deal, guys. So we are writing up that one as we speak, but I think the realtor is going to write it up because it's still technically listed with her. But hurrah, a 2.875 interest rate. So if you see that on there, that's how we got that deal. I just called out of the blue and the realtor was like, yeah, and she was great. So turnkey house, absolutely beautiful. Young lady bought it a year and a half ago. Met a young man. They are expecting a baby. She's moved in with him. And this house is just sitting there empty. Her sister's like renting out a bedroom and they're moving out in like 2 weeks. So she's like, we want to get this thing sold now. So super exciting.
Yeah.
So, okay, guys, I know we had some questions, but I want to say, I think we nabbed them all actually.
Yeah. So we have an office. We decided since we went virtual, Lexi's been working from home, and how do you liking that?
It's nice. I like the flexibility.
Yeah. So we're still going to have our team meetings, and looking forward to having you guys in person. But thank you so much for taking your time out of today from talking to sellers to talk to us and everyone here. I know that just hearing your perspective and you kind of just putting your little spin on it can definitely be a lot, for some people to hear, and very eye-opening. So thank you again.
Yeah. So thank you for coming once again. And, the part of what we love to do is, because the kids still love Lexi, we actually have either her come over our house, especially guys, when it's like right now in Florida, it feels like
It's like an oven. Yeah.
But like in the spring, fall, and the winter when it's gorgeous, like we have meetings, and you can go on our social media and see it. Like we invite these guys over our house, and we work from here next to the pool. And when we had an office, we had it, which is cool because we get to work together. We learned a lot. But I've also found having that flexibility is really key too. So we were gone the month of July, and we left Florida. Lexi left the month of July and went back to Ohio. Luca left the month of July and went back to Kansas City. And guys, we were still doing deals.
Yeah.
And when we came back, this is why I love doing what we do. We kind of all looked at each other and like, hey, isn't being home like kind of nice? And especially because you just got your dog too. So I'm like, it's a lot to, have this puppy. Like,
and not for nothing, this traffic in Florida is a little nutty. Yeah. Even like down the street, but yeah.
And you only live like 20 minutes from us.
Yeah, so, it's not too bad.
So once a week, we'll either come over here for now, or we could go to a Starbucks and just work for a little bit. But Lexi know how I roll. If we get our work done, I am the biggest, like, let's cut out of work early. So the fact that you could even do it from home now or from anywhere. So there are days that we go to the beach and the kids are running around and I'm getting some work done, right?
Yep.
Or we could do those things. So
because also we know that the 6 p.m. Clearwater call might happen. So I think that's having that flexibility of knowing like, okay, like I might be on later, so take my time now.
Well, and that's kind of the point too, because guys, the one thing I will say is, in order to be successful, is you have to be willing to do the things that unsuccessful people aren't willing to do.
Yeah.
So when Lexi made that call at 7:00 at night, she could have said, Joe, I'm off hours. But now when we look at what that deal is going to make and look at how much that's going to go into her pocket, there's a very good reason why she got in that call. And just taking those small extra steps, building the rapport, getting them that extra call, guys, those are the differences of those deals getting done or not. And really, it's just that simple. So the one thing I always love is I always say Lexi smiles through her voice when she talks to somebody, and you could all hear that here. So when you are talking to the seller, all these wonderful tips, make sure you're smiling on your voice. Be really, really nice, especially that first 5, 10, 15 seconds when they're getting to know you. Ask some great questions and then follow up. And take action, guys. Just do the thing and call the people.
Yeah, these comments rolling in, Lexi, you just gave so many people like a lot of confidence for Mr. Grumpy Pants, because they've been hearing some of the cranky people there, but just giving them some food for thought. So people are going to hop off, make some calls, guys. If you want to catch more of this, then tune in next week. We'll go live again 2 p.m. Eastern. Otherwise, you can find us on YouTube. We'll put the recordings up there and anywhere you find podcasts available.
Yeah. And guys, we're also hosting local meetups here.
Oh yeah.
In the Bradenton area. And Lexi's coming to these things, guys. So are we. So if you definitely are in the Florida area and you want to come down, send us a message. We'd love to have you there.
All
Cool.
right. Thank you so much, Lexi.
All right. Thanks, guys. Have a great week, and we'll see you next weekend,
Thank-
guys.
Bye.